Hello and welcome to another episode of Alec Mapa Hot Mess with Matthew Dempsey, psychotherapist. I'm Alec Mapa. I'm an actor and comedian, and that's how I identify.
And I'm Matthew Dempsey, and I identify as a psychotherapist and multicultural counselor. And here we are.
I have so many trans friends and family, and what they've done for me is. Let's just jump right into it. Is made me question how I identify.
Yes.
Constantly. Like I've never, it's something I never really thought about before, but I do identify as a magical kind of male.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me more. What does that mean?
Well, non-gender conforming. I'm an effeminate man, and for years, like I didn't have my therapist, who's so salty. I've been with him for like 12 years. I said none of this vocabulary existed when I was a teenager.
Right.
And he goes, right. So you were just a fag.
Yeah, so I mean, there's power in identifying and being able to understand.
That if I had like, I wonder, like, I'm not sure it would have eased the road for me entirely, but if I had said like, oh, this is what I am, and this is the thing, and it's legitimate, and which is what the language of today's youth have.
I love it. I love that everything's evolving. I love that the language is evolving. Not that I think that we need to grasp onto like identities and labels, but it is helpful for us to just have some framework. And the fact that there's so many more options to choose from, I think is amazing. I love it.
I think that you're either liberated by the label, or you can be constricted by it.
You can be constricted by it. You can be tortured by it. It just depends. Like anything in life, if we're going to be really rigid about things, we're going to have a difficult time. But when we can use things more as a framework, as a structure that is, kind of a little bit more fluid, I think that's actually what can be the most helpful. So we have, a way of understanding ourselves, but not having to pigeonhole ourselves to any kind of one specific definition.
How did you feel after? Do you remember a certain point where you were like, I'm gay, this is it?
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. So I did the whole thing where, I started, talking to guys, and I was like, well, I guess I'm bisexual then. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing that whole thing.
Which is what the bisexuals are pissed off about too.
I know. Well, we've all got our paths anyway. But so I did that for a while. And then I remember talking to my very first boyfriend, and he was just like, yeah, I'm gay. And I was like, you're like, gay, like you're just fully gay. And he was just like, yeah, he's like, I did the whole bi thing too. And, by the way, we're like 17 years old. And he's like, and I just kind of realized after a while, it's like, I'm not hooking up with girls. I'm not interested in girls. So I just like decided to like, pull the trigger and go for it. And it was after that I was like, I'm gay. Because I'm not going to date girls. I don't want to be with girls. So I just had to arrive at that place. But yeah.
I was with girls because I had great friendships with girls. Yeah. I would be like so emotionally one with women, and I had sex with women in high school, girls. But I had great sex with men, but no emotional connection.
Yeah.
So I lived in that kind of anxiety for a bit, like, oh, I can be physical with a man, but I've never been in a situation where I had a boyfriend or felt secure enough in myself to, you know what I mean? It was like, yeah.
It's easy to divide things up a little bit, right? Like, it's just like, oh, well, this is just for sex or pleasure, but like relationships and intimacy can be with women, and then it can maybe get a little confusing. Yeah.
And then it came to a head for me. It came to, I think, freshman year of college, or right before I went to NYU, where I knew I couldn't be faithful to a girlfriend. Like it was just never gonna happen. And
was that the moment then that you kind of moved into a new identity?
Like, yeah, this is it. And I remember feeling a little bit of sadness about that, feeling like, I'm gonna lose out on this kind of connection.
Yes.
Because at the point, at 18 years old, what do you know? But at that point in my life, I really honestly believe that kind of emotional connection with a man wasn't possible for me.
Totally. And I think that's understandable, especially at the time when you were 18 and where the community was at that point. Right. It was incredibly hard to, find like more intimacy, and people who are gay guys, especially. Yeah, it for sure is. Absolutely. Because when you grow up with so much shame around who you are, even after you come out of the closet, it's hard to open up the more authentic parts of us, which is how we meaningfully connect with others. Right. So it becomes more of a task for us. So obviously a lot more challenging. Do you remember, first of all, I just want to be clear. So like, have you ever questioned your gender identity?
Oh, I talked about this on the show. You know, I was in a Broadway show for nearly 3 years called M Butterfly, where I was in drag every single night for a good 2 hours, and then the last half hour of the show I was naked. But and I remember, like, you know, I'd be womanly, I would get the attention backstage. I felt like a pretty girl, but I always felt so liberated. My favorite part of the show was taking everything off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I knew, it was like, yeah, I'm not no, like, I didn't even want to, like, you know, like today there's so many drag queens.
Yeah.
Like that would have been the perfect transition point for me. Like professionally, I'm going to be a drag queen from now on.
Right.
I never pursued it just because I liked the way I looked, but I never identified as female. I liked my genitals. I liked having sex with men as a man.
Right.
Yeah.
But just identifying as male, that always felt like that was the right identity for you. That wasn't something that you questioned. Yeah, that's the same with me. Do you remember the first time that, like, what was the first introduction for you to the trans community? Do you remember that?
Well, you know, I had a lot of friends who were drag queens, and I'd go see them perform. And in a lot of drag lineups, there's inevitably, you know, there's the comedy queen, there's the dancing queen, there's a lip sync. There was usually a trans girl or girls in the lineup, showgirls.
Yeah.
And they were the realness queens who would come out and just astonish people. And so that was my intro to the community of trans women.
Yeah.
And as a teenager, my perception of it was like, one, that's really brave.
Yes.
But the other side of that was like, wow, they really went all the way.
Yeah.
All the way.
Right. Well, which is kind of what I mean, like a version of that I thought with my first boyfriend, like, wow, you're all the way gay. Like you really went for it. Right. Yeah. And the amount
all
like
the
the kind of
gay with Matt
all
Dempsey,
the way.
That's your next show.
The amount of, honestly, and it's just what was even what I thought at 17 with my boyfriend was, wow, like you went there, and the fear that you had to overcome and the courage that you had to have just to even get to that place and identify in that way. For sure. The first introduction that I had was during grad school. For me, my internship was exactly where I wanted to be, which was the LGBT Community Center in New York. And that was the first time. And I was interacting with a ton of trans people. At the time, I had no clue that they were trans at all. And it was only through, kind of like the introductions and starting to get to know each other and opening up about our identities that I started to figure out. But I remember then, and like one of my, intern buddies was just kind of like, oh, so-and-so is trans and so-and-so is trans. I was like, what? I started looking around and I swear I thought everybody was trans at that point. It was like, it was like my like 25-year-old mind, like, blown. And it was just the first
around
time.
Anywhere, like walk out the door right now and go, and just think in your mind, everybody's trans.
Yes.
And look around and go, yeah, that makes sense. Or anybody.
Totally. Yeah. It could, for sure. And because also obviously trans does not necessarily mean what you're presenting, right? Kind of like your aesthetic or your physical attributes at all, it's an identity. I present as a rich white woman. I present. Yes.
Kind of like I've had friends from high school who have since come out as trans. And who have transitioned. Who identified as male. I have two friends from high school and who identified as male, and even back in high school were incredibly butch, and it was a radical act in the 80s. I mean, they went to the prom and tuxedos and presented as male.
Yeah.
Fully. My one friend, Chris Shanks, who came out as hi Chris, was, and is still Chris, didn't have to change his name, got the testosterone, transitioned, and now lives as a gay man.
Okay, sorry. So was
born biologically female.
Got it.
Transitioned to male.
Gotcha. Okay.
He said, sorry, I just misgendered him. He said that was the testosterone, the effect that it had on him was like, I want to fuck a guy.
Yes, that's actually very common. That's very common. There's times that I've worked with trans clients and, kind of same thing as a trans male and newly going through testosterone treatment. And what he was saying was, I feel really confused because I feel like I'm really starting to be attracted to men in ways that I haven't before. I've always, I used to identify as lesbian and have always been interested sexually and otherwise in women. But and I find myself interested in men, and I can't tell if I'm actually attracted to them, like in a physical kind of like animalistic way, or if I just kind of want to be them. And so it was like this really kind of interesting kind of developmental part of that journey. And that's not uncommon.
I've never wanted to be anybody I had sex with. I want to be somebody who wants to leave right after. Yeah, that's fascinating to me, because I have two of my other friends, Andrea James and Calpurnia Adams, said that a lot of trans women who are just in the process of get into relationships with openly trans women at the beginning of their transition.
I think that makes sense. You know, we're drawn to the things that we want to be exposed to, need to learn from. So that happens all the time for all of us. It's such a part of the psychology of attraction, is that we're drawn to people for whatever lessons, either directly or, you know, kind of under the level of consciousness. But for sure, that's common.
I think identity is going to be the next fluid thing, as much as sexuality is. Like,
I love it. And I love that the conversation continues to open up and everything is fluid. I'm here for it.
I can't think of a better segue.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bring on our guest.
For sure. We are very excited about our guest today. It's Faith Soloway. Faith was a writer and producer on the groundbreaking show Transparent, which we all love, which was created by her sister and changed the shape of trans narratives in our country. You may not realize that the show was based on the experience of Faith's father transitioning later in life.
Faith is also a composer. She wrote the music for the last episode of the show. Wow. She's also been an educator for 27 years in the areas of gender and sexuality. She is multi-talented, fascinating, and we are thrilled to talk to her today about some of her struggles and experiences with self-identity and self-acceptance. Please welcome to the show our friend Faith Soloway.
Yay!
Hi, hello.
Hi, Faith.
Hey, hello. And this is like, we're right here in this discussion. My sibling is, I refer to Joey as my sibling, not my sister. So that is old. We should make sure in the bios going out, but that's something, Matthew, that I've had to learn, that I'm like, and I misgender them, and I call them the old name, and it is constantly evolving. And we are like brought to this place of really being present. That's what it is. I'm not saying, hey guys, anymore. I almost said that to both of you.
Yeah. Really? Is
that's
bad.
Yeah, it's not great for people that don't want to be a community of guys, even though, gosh, that was my like growing up. Hey, you guys, hey, you guys. And I'm
fine with hey guys, hey gays, hey homos.
Yeah, hey gays, hey homos. I know. But I think, Al, that the way that we queer each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Like hey homos, hey gays is an affinity but hey guys is this more cis normative way of affinity.
Yeah.
So that's, believe me, all I said was guys.
Yeah,
I hear a lot of young women, girls, white girls, refer to each other as dude. Like that's a very thing.
Dude,
well, totally. And a reflection of like misogyny and a patriarchal, you know, kind of dominated society, which is lopsided. And so how better can we maybe try to find like some neutral territory?
Dude, I mean, it's just like, it really is a thing. And it is, you're right. It's like, it's the patriarchy.
What do you do besides guys? Do you have a substitute, or you just say, hey?
I say people, peeps.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey peeps, hey friends. But it really, that's the hardest one, because I just said it left and right. I worked with kids all the time. It was always, you know, hey guys, walking in a room, hey guys. You realize your language is just, you know, what you use is.
Yeah, that's like back in the day, we used to say anything that was bad was gay. Like, oh my God, you're being so gay, or or that's so gay, as if it was a bad thing, and it was just so ingrained in not realizing the
it just permeates your consciousness.
And people fight over those terms too. Like don't police me. I don't mean that. You know, I have a gay mother. I want my words. So it's a really interesting thing to get into with people.
I've been doing so many fundraisers for PFLAG. That's where we met in New York, PFLAG. And then I was lobbying for Family Equality Council in Washington, D.C. and the transgender task force there. And at the beginning of every meeting, we would introduce ourselves and say our preferred pronouns. Like that was standard practice from
it should
now
be
on.
everywhere now.
The safest way to check in with people. How has you were talking about Jill/Joey/Jill, like how has the change of the name affected your relationship dynamic?
You know, the name actually was easy for me because I used to call Joey things like Jerry, Jilly, and Joey was actually not hard. They was harder. And I'll still just forget and go to, you know, their it's referred to as a dead name, but the old name. And I've learned how to be in that moment where you misgender or dead name, and how to be in that moment too. I mean, I've been educated by my trans friends and gender nonconforming friends, and I just am excited for more people to be in those moments to figure it out. You know?
What's helpful for you? I think that would be helpful for other people listening to hear. So when you find yourself in a position where you misgender or misidentify somebody, what do you do?
I don't profusely apologize. I just correct myself and go on. Because you do the thing where you're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. The person's taking care of your feelings. That's not what you wanted.
Right.
You're just like, so an example, if Alec, if you transitioned and your name was Andrea, and I said, so Andrea, what we need to start doing is, it needs to be that smooth.
Named me.
Got it. Just make the correction and keep it moving.
How dare you?
Yeah. And conversation is done. Usually that doesn't happen.
Cancel Faith. Hashtag cancel Faith Soloway. I do the very thing that you said not to do. I apologize and I make myself an emotional burden for the person that I dead named.
But then it becomes about, you know, obviously we don't. It's education all around.
Okay. So how do you educate people then when, you know, it's like for a lot of us, if the more we're exposed to it, the more we practice it, the more mindful of it, obviously we're better equipped to be able to do that, right? We can kind of like correct ourselves, don't miss a beat, not personalize it. For a lot of people though, this isn't something that's typical for them. And so when it gets brought up, they can get really defensive. So how do you coach people through that kind of defensiveness?
Yeah, you give them examples of something that could be like that example. So when this person became a doctor, you didn't like say, I'm not going to call you Dr. Doolittle.
Yeah.
horrible example. But you know,
I think it's a terrific example.
Okay. The person is asking you to call them something that is their identity. It makes them comfortable. It's how they want to present. And you, wherever your ideology or your beliefs are, has nothing to do with what they want to be called.
Right. Yeah.
So I've had a friend, her name was Denise. She changed her name to Farai. And everybody was like, okay, Farai. And I'm like, that's like, I don't know, I can't remember like why, but you know, it was a thing. And you know, and it's, first of all, there's that, but it's really, people are trans people exist. It's in our history. We are trans. So they are, it is not up to them to make you feel comfortable. It is up to you
to
accept.
And to respect people's identity. Like it kind of, when you were just talking about that maybe I remember like years ago, there was this kind of new friend that me and my group had made, and he was going by the name of like Toph, and we are just like, okay, Toph, whatever. And after like several months, then we realized like, oh, he moved from like wherever, and he used to go by Chris. Everybody's calling him Chris there. So he totally came here and reinvented himself, and we're just like, oh God. We have like judgments about it.
Yes.
I had
at the end of the day, who cares if somebody's trying on new hats or wants to experiment and identify newly? If that makes that person happy, do it. Respect.
My college boyfriend changed names mid-relationship, and I was not a good sport about it.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his name was Larry Lefkowitz, which was like a fantastic
that's a good name.
Ashkenazi Polish Jewish name. And the thing that was great about him being Larry Lefkowitz to me was that he was beautiful. He's like a model, but he had this very Jewish name, and I loved the contrast of that. And he was starting out as an actor and a singer, and he changed his name to a very kind of like to what to me was like kind of like a more goyish name of Noah Jordan. And he wanted to Noah Jordan. And I had that, like when you said your friend.
I did too. Did you see me shake my head?
Yeah, I was
I'm Jewish. I'm like, what's wrong with that name? It's
your
name.
Yeah, it's a good name. It's good.
I was so obstinate about it. We had fights about it. He goes, I want you to introduce me as Noah. And I was like, you introduce yourself as Noah, Larry. We broke up shortly thereafter. I just remember that I was like a total dick about it. Like I was not cool with it at all. Now we're good friends, but back in the day, whoosh.
Yeah.
Whoosh.
Now you said you worked as an educator for 27 years. Specifically where?
Boston, where I am right now, actually.
Oh, fantastic.
I was like always the person's first lesbian. Tell us, like, what is it like to be a gay person? What is it like to be a lesbian? For all of these kids that were like
the beginner lesbian.
Local lesbian.
I was the one. There was I worked in a group that's still. It's a fantastic group. It's still going on today. Right now it's called Rehearsal for Life in Boston, but it was called Urban Improv at the time, and I directed one of the troops there, and specifically sexuality and gender, especially gender, as I left to do Transparent, actually, right as I was leaving, about 2014, is right when the gender issues were like popping up.
Yeah.
There was no language even right around then, in the Boston public schools that I knew of. And so we did everything. I mean, we worked with kids on all kinds of psychological, moral issues and stuff like that through theater and discussion. But it was always the sexuality and gender stuff that they loved to talk about, that they couldn't wait to talk about. But you would always see the kids that you knew were bisexual first, as you said. Yeah, I'm bi. Okay. And we're all thinking, and you're going to be gay next year. But that's again my my prejudice about that whole thing about the way sexuality kind of works. But it was always a vibrant discussion, and loved it. And still, I like when you two were talking about all of this right at the beginning. I can't get enough of the discussion because it's ever evolving. Totally. We run on the set of Transparent. We would always do we would do these circles, and we would do the pronouns, and then some your pronoun. You're not even supposed to say preferred pronoun right now. It's your pronoun, right?
Right.
That vocabulary has just changed.
Yeah.
So these older women who are in their 70s were like, I don't know, maybe I'm they too. Like they were experiencing. You could see them experiencing the electricity of this freedom as like one person said, I'm it. One person said, I'm he or I'm she. And, depending on the day, one person is, I am, my pronouns are he, they, whatever, it was just, and it wasn't, the pronoun circles are so interesting too, because that's enough to like give you an identity crisis as you're going around for the first time and uttering it for the first time. I've been there.
Did you have a first time pronoun circle experience where you were like,
well, I'm mid 50s, and the whole gender thing, is for me, I think, had I had that language and support when I was a little kid, I would have transitioned.
Really?
I think. I was a little boy. I was a tomboy. My parents let me dress however I wanted to, which was amazing back then in the 70s. Yeah. I rode around on my bike with my shirt off. They kind of let me do it until, I developed, I'm sure. I didn't do it all the time, but I remember that freedom. I remember I'm a boy.
Yeah.
And I never had dolls. I never had Barbie dolls. I only, when you play the pretend games, I was always wanting to hook up find a wife, little daddy guy, and it was so clear. And then later, it feels like a really classic journey. I was like, oh no, I'm a lesbian. I like girls, which was really true. That was a whole like torturous thing for me. It was not, but made it to the lesbian island. And then and then I'm like, man, I've got something going on here because I am jealous of trans dudes.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm looking at Matthew like, look at that beard, look at that hair. You know, like, how do I do that? And yeah, so it's like a real, like, right now
how do you I'm like realizing we're having this conversation and I'm not even sure how you identify.
My pronouns are she and her.
Mm-hmm.
When I am quote unquote misgendered in supermarkets or whatever all the time, I like it.
Yeah.
My partners of late have, like, we've had kind of a femme butch woman man dynamic, so that kind of works. I think, like, as a lesbian, as a butch-ish lesbian, we are allowed to play in that much more so, I think, than trans women were of my age.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we can be fluid. Our body parts become something else. Sexual needs are, you know, talked about, and which you're young and you're just like trying to get through sex. You know? And you're shamed. I'm not supposed to feel this way. I'm not supposed to be gay. I'm not supposed to be trans. So now that we are allowing ourselves to, should I turn this light on? Is that worse?
No, nice.
Either
glow.
It's
very
stimulating conversation.
About to tell a ghost story by the fire. It was on a night like this.
I don't know where I am. Just realized I'm sitting in the dark.
It's an interesting discussion because I've been friends with so many, I mean, certainly in high school and throughout college, with so many women who identified as butch, that was the butch identity. And it's like, I'm a butch and this is it. And my aunt, one of the aunts who raised me, is a lesbian. And she's in her 60s now. So she's from the 50s. And she invited me to a Filipino lesbian party that was happening in Los Angeles.
Oh, I want to be there.
Yeah. It was fascinating because they were all Filipino lesbians in her age group. This is like maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Half of the lesbians in the room were in Hawaiian shirts and khakis and were the butches. And all of the women, the femmes were like ultra femme, high heels, lipstick, and the delineation was clear. And I don't know if that's the same anymore.
The babies don't do that anymore. The babies, the 20s to the 20-year-olds, I don't think. Maybe, I mean,
there's a lot more fluidity, it seems, right? Like that there's so much more wiggle room to kind of play around, like as you were saying before. I think that seems to be the case, even for a lot of like younger gay guys, like I'm following on social media. It's like you just see the comfort and the openness and fluidity with it. You gotta play.
Yeah. And then there are some that are just like, I'm on TikTok all the time too. I mean, that are just like baby butches and you know, just clearly this is who I am. And then I love these straight women in the South. They're like, I'm married and I have 2 kids, but baby, you could turn me, you know, and like, it's like crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
When you said you were when you look at trans men and you get jealous, one, I'm interested in the situation, and 2, I'm interested in how much of your brain does that occupy?
Sometimes it occupied. That's a great question.
That is a good question.
And I'm so glad I've got a psychotherapist right there. Maybe you can help me.
Isn't this a fun show?
No, when I talked to the producer, I was like, I could talk about this forever because I'm so on the fringe I'm so on the edge of it, and I'm so old to still be on the edge of it, and I still question so much.
Yeah.
And how much time does it take up? There was that face, that gender app thing.
Yes.
I was putting mustaches and beards on my face for months.
Yeah.
And I was my friends who had transitioned, I was just like, like jealousy, like complete jealousy, but I'm not tortured, like I'm not in pain.
You're not agonizing over it.
I'm not agonizing. I've had so many conversations, my poor trans male friends, I've had so many conversations with them. Like, it's not too late, Faith, okay? But I kind of am comfortable. You know I'm comfortable with who I am, and my voice. You know, I know that is something that I don't have gender dysphoria. That's what I realized.
Yeah.
And when you're in the pain of gender dysphoria is when And not all, for all, every trans, the thing I learned and I know is that every trans experience is completely different, but it's a lot to transition. It's a lot.
Your dad, your dad transitioned in his 70s.
Well, she came out in her 70s. And that is a whole thing that is, she's in another generation where sometimes she's like, maybe I'm more like gender queer as well, like,
but I love that because
wearing she wears women's clothes, and she's very much wants to be in that presentation and wants to be in that identity.
But I love the way that you're describing kind of all of this, even your own experience with it, because it just sounds like there's this constant kind of check-in with yourself and a healthy curiosity. And like, you don't necessarily need to like nail certain identities down at any one given point, but there's still this kind of just like openness. And I think it's just typical for us as human beings. We want to have answers. And so our tendency is to just try and like finish the story. Let's like know what's happening because it makes us feel safe. But when we have more of an evolved approach where we know we don't have to be there in order to be finished or in order to be okay, then that gives more of that fluidity, and it allows for more openness to just like fully step into where we are and who we are.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, Matthew. The safety of the story, the safety of the label, the safety of this, like you said, the structure. What am I going to build this house in?
Totally.
And we forget that there are all different kinds of structures. It's like, because it is a spectrum. I mean, I know people who are trans who looked at their bodies pre-transition and this is not me. This does not line up with who I am on the outside, and I can't live any other way.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I was like, I loved David Cassidy. And, and wanted to be him. That was my generation. And then Johnny Depp. And these boys that were just like, I just wanted to be,
who are kind of like traditionally effeminate in certain ways too. Like they were very pretty, right?
Boys,
right. So like kind of a little bit more in the middle than like these kind of extreme, like,
There's an androgyny to teen idols that fascinates me. That girls are kind of, it's like almost like this latent lesbianism, like Justin Bieber when he first came out looked like a little girl.
Yeah, like a lesbian.
He looked like a lesbian. He had
I love when they would compare Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber like side by side at a certain point of their ages, and you like couldn't tell who was who.
And like all girls seem to like go like Sean Cassidy or David Cassidy. I mean, the long hair. In Germany, there is in German culture, there is when girls are in 11, 12 years old, it is socially acceptable. This goes back to Weimar Germany, the 20s, 30s. It's socially acceptable for you to have a crush on a girl and to bring a girl presence in school and to kind of express that part of yourself. And I think that how it manifests in our culture is girls fall in love with pretty boys. And it's also like lining up with all the K-pop stuff now because they're incredibly androgynous.
Yes.
I need to see that doc.
This is a whole other rabbit hole. What knocked me out about, in meeting both of you was that you took your story, your personal story about what happened in your family, and you turned it into a television show. Personally, I couldn't think of a worse experience than having to do a television show about my parents. I couldn't watch or write it. I loved that show. The first season, Judith Light, just such extraordinary
performance.
Love her. Now, when you see your family up there and these actors, established actors, portraying your family, how close is it to the real thing?
There's edges, there's flavors. There's not one is a carbon copy, but there's definitely flavors and feels. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because it happened. It happened to you.
Right. And it didn't happen the way that it happened in the show at all. My parent actually came out way after my parents had divorced, even though that was the narrative on the show. It wasn't directly after. And, we were sort of at different coasts, and we weren't really in my parents' life like the characters. This family's a very enmeshed family. And we were Joey and I were a little older, but their three kids are like a bit of a weird composite of me, Joey and myself. And there's definite flavors that are very, very real. Yeah.
Wow. And it was definitely part of the movement in 2014. It's kind of like the consciousness just kind of did a warp drive, and so much so that like less than a couple seasons after, especially with the accusations of harassment with Jeffrey on the show, the cisgender man playing a trans woman kind of became an obsolete concept really, really fast. How did you handle that working on the show?
Well, it was something that from the beginning we were, we had trans consultants with us, and because we were starting our character off as Mort, even though it was just a little bit pre-transition, they were like, yeah, I think this could work, and then because, when we started, we definitely had people in the trans community that were not happy. We didn't quite understand, as you do now, that why. And, Jeffrey reminded us of our parent. It was like kind of this uneducated yet true thing. It was like a little bit of everything. And even I would say even the trans, I don't know, I don't want to speak for all of our trans consultants, and we had we had non-conforming gender non-conforming writer first season. Second season we had Lady J in the room, and then more trans writers as we went, and obviously more producers, but people were like, yeah, we have other trans actors, this trans actor isn't played by Alexandra and Trace Lissette, and directors, Reese Ernst and I can't think of, I'm blanking on an amazing director who's a trans male director. He's done so much. And I feel bad that I can't remember his name right now. Wonderful dude.
Make something up.
I'm going to say Sid, but that's not his name.
Sid Vicious.
Yeah. But, and within all the department, like we went full steam ahead with like having a trans advocacy approach,
right?
Hiring everybody that we could with behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And it was Jeffrey Tambor that was like the matriarch. Mora became more of, as culture was catching up with the show, more of an issue,
right?
And then as we were, I think that maybe is the last
one,
totally,
cis actor playing a trans character.
I remember
there were a slew of them before. So
but the ground shifted so fast.
It did. I remember him speaking at, was it at the Emmys or some award show, and he gave a speech just basically saying like, we hear you, thank you for being patient, we're trying to do the best that we can, and just speaking to it and acknowledging it, I thought was great too. But it also kind of made me think of Orange is the New Black, the way that they did it for Laverne Cox, because her character, obviously Laverne Cox, but when they would do flashbacks to pre-transition, Laverne Cox actually has an identical twin brother.
I know.
That was just like, you're never really going to get that opportunity too much, right? To have one play the other. But
I didn't know that until I read. I was like, oh, she's in drag or something like that.
I know, that's what I thought too. Yeah, it worked out perfectly
I have
for that show.
Friends who worked as trans consultants. Calpurnia Adams, who
I know who she is.
Coached Felicity Huffman, and she and Andrea James coached Felicity Huffman, and also she also coached Jared Leto for Dallas Buyers Club, and got Leto. Is it Leto?
Jared Leto.
I mean, that's the thing. Jared Leto. I have so many questions about that because that got. Can I swear on this?
Yeah, you can say.
Because that movie and everybody got so shit on.
Yeah.
And yet our trans.
And she got shit on for doing it. And
that's what I was going to ask.
She got shit on a lot. She got shit on for Felicity, and her issue was she was like, listen. We're not at the point now where they're letting us play us. And if somebody's going to do it, I want to make sure that this story is told correctly and respectfully.
Yeah.
And even for saying that, for taking that position, she was like dragged. And this is a woman who, her boyfriend was killed in a hate crime. You know, she came to prominence because of this awful tragedy in her life. And so many of the younger generation of trans, again, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the reaction to her online from the younger generation was very kind of intolerant and militant.
Well, yeah, you know, it's so interesting. I get this, I start to get uncomfortable talking about trans issues. This thing happens to me where I'm not trans. I shouldn't be talking about trans issues. And then I'm like, no, Faith, there is some allowance. You are trans, and there's trans in you, and there's trans in your family. Go ahead.
We're also talking about gender identity.
Right? I know, but
broadly.
it's like, I want these people. It makes me so sad that Calpurnia said that, and they're not going to let us play. You know, it feels historical. It feels like a Black person saying, I'm not, you know, they're not going to let us play this race. So while I'm here, I'm going to coach some white actor how to be, you know, it's like, I get sad, you know.
Also, I would maybe even like the other side of it too, though. Like, if you think about it, how incredible!
Yeah, help me, doctor.
But how incredible because what we're talking about are competing voices within the trans community, right? Different perspectives and stuff.
Which was monolithic.
Which was other just kind of otherwise, you know, and historically, one note, if it was even one note that was being played at all. So the fact that there's more diversity in even the community and perspectives, even if it's conflicting, like, wow, that's evolution in and of itself, and how beautiful that we get to have that expressed.
Yeah, I know. Well, I could talk forever. And I remembered the name of the director, Silas Howard.
There we go. Not too far off from Sid.
Yes.
No, but the discomfort that you speak of that you feel like you don't have ownership in it.
Yes, there's this thing, like, I started
because I feel like you do.
I do
just from listening to you.
I do too, and I feel like I have been granted a certain access to be able to express potentially what trans people might feel from watching and feeling like, oh, this person was misgendered in my own community, in my own room right here, or like the pain of what they have gone through. But y'all will have trans people on this show if you haven't, you know, and that will be great, because they need the mic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And
but I do this thing, like, I remember, like, that because of the show, and it was way before where we are right now, anytime I would speak about our show and we've hired trans people and this, you know, I would get this uncomfortable feeling because I'm like, but I'm not trans. And then I'm going through my evolution, but maybe I am, you know.
Well, but
somebody said we're all trans. I think, Alec, you said it's like, yeah, maybe we are, and you know, and we have to look out for each other. But this world is this is a really hard world.
Well, it's really difficult, I think, and especially as we're becoming that much more aware and accepting of the fact that there's way more diversity that we need to acknowledge. Right. That we all have more of an opportunity to just speak from our own experiences, right? Like, nobody needs to claim, you know, the authority on any one group of people. Like, even for myself, there's a lot of times when I'll say, like, as gay guys, this and that, you know, if I'm like making a video or whatever for social media. And I'm way more mindful of the fact now more than ever about not speaking, you know, and kind of like, you know,
for everybody,
blanket terms. Exactly.
Yeah. I think what I've realized is I'm just not cis. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just not 100% cis.
Yeah. So, like, fluid, is it like fluid?
For me, like, people will use they for me because they're not sure, and it feels really good. But I haven't gone out there and said, no, it's she or her, because I am in that, like,
and
SpongeBob.
I bring up, you know, what you said, the safety of the story, and what it brings me to is that ambiguity is a really uncomfortable space to occupy.
Yes.
It is not safe.
Yes.
It is not
it feels not safe.
It feels not safe.
Yes.
It feels not safe.
An important distinction.
And, you know, I don't know what this quote is from, that he said that nobody's ever really lost. You know, that we go through our lives where we sometimes feel I'm directionless, I'm rudderless, but sometimes that there's a drift that's part of our existence as human beings on this planet.
Totally.
You know, it's like there's goo. It's not, there's a lot of gray area. And I think that certainly my comfort level is I always want to know the answer. I'm a scholar. I want to know, and having a child, I mean, you have a child. My son is 15, 16 years old. He's adopted. And sometimes things aren't going to be answered right away. Sometimes it's like you're going through this thing right now and it's not going to be fixed right away. It's just where we're at. And we have, as uncomfortable as this is, we're just going to have to step through it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And that's why people who people who are, claim the identity, people who are non-binary can live there and want to live there.
Yeah.
They want that. They don't want you to necessarily see one gender or one thing.
Or have it be so defined. Like I remember like one of the most powerful things I ever learned, especially as a counselor, is the power in saying, I don't know, meaning like, I don't have to have an answer for this. Like, and I learned that in at GMHC, which is an HIV/AIDS organization, and doing test counseling and psychoeducation for clients that would come through. And they taught us the importance of, it's our instinct when people ask us questions to have an answer. And so we would typically make something up or exaggerate a thing. And that's not helpful because that's misinformation. So just being able to feel empowered enough to say, I don't know, and I'll see if I can find that answer for you, but finding comfort in that ambiguity.
It was my young friend who said, you know, Faith, you might not be cis. And I was like, ugh, when you feel that kind of thing, that's like, that's true. I might not be. That's the most true thing that I felt so far, you know?
But it's interesting, like, you know, my son's generation, there's so many non-binary kids who are like, and they love it. And I look at them, you know, I pick them up from school and I'm like, yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's a whole new generation that it wasn't raised with the rigidity of gender that we were raised. You are right. This is a rabbit hole and we need to have you on 10 more times.
It's a rabbit hole. It's just, it's everything. It's as cloudy as it is illuminating.
This went by so fast. I feel like we're stoned. And
are we done?
And when we look up at the clock and it's 3:00 in the morning, I have loved this conversation with you.
Me too.
It's been a lovely conversation.
Okay, we usually end with a hot message on the Hot Mess podcast. What would you impart to anybody listening out there who's in a similar circumstance as you?
I think what you just said, Matthew, is true. We are so socialized to come up with an answer and to know right away. So we're that uncomfortable thing of not knowing, of not being cool enough to care, to have emotion. The more that you can resonate and sit with things that could potentially be uncomfortable for you in order to get to a truth, is the most important time you can have with yourself.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
that was great.
That's what my kid's going through right now as a teenager. There's so many unanswered questions and it's not going to be answered.
Let it steep, let it stew, let it steep.
Where can one find Faith Soloway on the social media? Are you on social media?
Yeah, I've got this fun little duo called One Long Earring right now that is really fun for me. Old feminist lesbians singing songs you don't want them to sing. And I can't wait to keep, that's like my alter ego, Joan Stone Suarez Levy. So if I want anybody to follow anything, it would be the One Long Earring on Instagram. And I'm, you know, that's really fun for me. It's my old schlocky shtick that I used to do in Chicago.
Oh,
and,
wonderful.
You know, love
the coffee house version.
She shouldn't, you know, she's got a dulcimer hammer maybe somewhere that she wants to bring out and play for you. And you're like, no. So her and her I won't go into it, but that's what I'm doing now. And I would love people to follow that as we start to
at the One Long Earring.
At the One Long Earring.
Opening for Frank at a coffee house.
I would be thrilled. I have a gray wig. I've just this is my high drag. Is this? She's on a garlic farm, and she's you know a very high soprano voice. That's a whole. Invite me back as Joan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
It's a thrill. Thanks
so much. This was a thrill. It was so fun to talk to both of you. You're both.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, Matthew, that was mind blowing today.
That was great. I loved that conversation.
I love these kind of conversations.
Yeah, I really do too.
What's your hot message of the day?
I think I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Faith said, because I love that idea of getting still and finding some kind of comfort in the unknown, which is inherently difficult for us as human beings because we always want to have answers. But being able to recognize that and kind of just get still in that moment is what helps us get to the truth, like through the clouds and to the truth, like Faith said. And so I love that part. So I would echo that.
Right. And I think, and I'm going to piggyback on that on your.
Oh, so many piggybacking.
Oh, wow. Chain of piggybacking. It is that as much as, you know, we're always seeking safety, right?
Yeah.
And I think acknowledging that you don't know is a great thing.
Yes.
And to kind of embrace that you don't have the answer right now. Yeah. And just stop resisting it. I think by resisting of like not knowing, you know, fighting against it, you just kind of prolong your discomfort.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I'm saying. Where can people find you on the socials, Matthew? You
can find me at MJ Dempsey Psych on Instagram and Twitter, Matthew J. Dempsey Psychotherapy on Facebook.
You can find me at Alec Mapa at Instagram, Twitter, and the Facebook. And you can find us both at the Hot Mess Pod on Instagram and Twitter. God, so complicated. So many things. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We love doing the show. We love talking about mental health. And, you know, I joke that we're saving the world, but I really do believe that we're making the world a little less messy by one hot mess at a time.
That's right.
And acknowledging that we are hot messes. So tune in next week for more hot mess fun.
Bye, guys.